resist the temptation of this second reunion for a very long time.
Yeah.
Now, what made returning to Culture Club so difficult for you?
Well, it wasn't difficult. It's just that when the idea first started, we were still with our original manager, who was kind of coming to pretty much retirement age. He was kind of getting to that point where I certainly knew that I needed to find a new manager. And I think the other guys felt the same. And what was being offered in terms of a tour just wasn't exciting to me. I just felt that it wasn't the right thing. I didn't feel comfortable about it. I didn't feel that we had connected sufficiently to be able to go on the road. And I was looking for a manager. I really wanted a manager. And it took me like 2 or 3 years to find the right manager. I went through a few. And eventually I found someone that I really liked. And that made the whole idea of going on the road make more sense, because I had someone who, you know, would look after me properly, and there was trusting, all that kind of thing, you know. And I also, you know, I wanted to be, you know, like when a footballer goes to play a football match, they have to be match ready. I wanted to be in a better place physically, mentally, emotionally. I wasn't ready, you know, and I didn't feel like I would be the best version of myself for the band, you know. And so, you know, by the time we did the tour in 2015, I felt like I was ready to go out on the road. I was ready to, you know, to take on that task, you know, because it's quite difficult to... We've just been on the road for 5 months. It's a long time. And you have to be ready for that. You can't just do it, you know.
Were you avoiding the reunion maybe also a little bit because of the former relationship involved? I mean, there are feelings involved.
Like what? be specific. I can't work with vagans. What do you mean? I hope you're not talking about me and John. Jesus Christ. Well, that's ridiculous. I mean, that is really it's the most ridiculous thing you could ever say.
Yeah, right.
I mean, it's so long ago that, you know, and certainly that would never be, if I felt that way, I certainly wouldn't be on the road with John, Roy and Mikey, you know, that would be impossible, you know. So, you know, talking about me and John's like talking about dinosaurs roaming the earth. It's so ridiculous. I mean, we are so comfortable with each other. You know, John has a whole nother life now. I have a whole nother life, you know. It's like he has 3 children. I mean, that's how far away we are from each other in terms of, you know, our relationship. It's like a mythical beast. It's so crazy that people think that.
Before you focused on...
but also, another important thing to say, you know, people move on, you know, they move on and they become happy. I would never want to go back to where I was 30 years ago, you know. I mean, I'm a very different person now. My needs are very different. I would never want to be in a kind of relationship that I was in when I was like 19, 20. That would never work for me. I'm just not. I'm not a victim anymore.
Right.
Do you really want to hurt me? You can't. I won't let you. That's how it is now. You know, so I mean, you know, it's always fascinating when people bring up that thing of me and John, because I think it's so funny. It's like, it's just, there is no thing. You know?
Well, you know, I think it's difficult to see into a band, and
I think
chemistry within a band is
something
very special.
If you talk about any relationship,
maybe,
from the outside, you know, whether your parents, your own relationships, you know, it's impossible to analyze anyone's relationship from the outside, you know. And even if you spent some time with us, you wouldn't necessarily understand the dynamic, you know. I mean, we're a band, and I feel like the only time we really make sense is on stage. The rest of the time, I do find myself thinking, what am I doing with these people? Who are they? What do they want? You know, I mean, that's the nature of bands, that, you know, you are, you know, you're not necessarily people that have anything in common. You're just musicians that have come together by some weird cosmic osmosis, accident, whatever it may be. And, you know, you're stuck with what you've created. You know, we are Culture Club. There's nothing we can do about that now. And I think at this point, it's about allowing people to be who they are. you know, allowing people to have their own personalities, to choose your battles. It's really about being grown up, which is a really, you know, it's a scary concept for a musician. Growing up, you know, and I think that's what it's about. It's about, you know, what's important.
Yeah.
What are you going to fight about? Fight about things that matter. Don't fight about things that don't matter. You know, choose your wars, you know, I think.
You reacted on David Bowie's death, and now
Yeah.
this week we learned
Pete
that Pete Burns died. Yeah. Can you share a memory you have with him?
I have so many funny memories of Pete Burns. I mean, when I first met Pete Burns, he walked up to me in the 70s and said, "You've copied my look."
No way.
That was the
At
first.
the Blitz Club? Or?
No, this was at a club called the Camden Palace.
Right.
I was going to the toilet and I was confronted by Pete Burns, his wife Lynn, and Steve Coy, who, you know, was the drummer. And he came up to me. I had dreadlocks, he had dreadlocks, and he said, "You copied my look." And I was like, "I don't look like you." You know, and there was the kind of confrontation. I knew about Pete long before I met him. You know, the interesting thing about the 70s, you know, after punk, we didn't have the internet, we didn't have cell phones, we didn't have the, you know, any kind of form of communication other than fanzines. There were some magazines, you know, but that was still to develop. But somehow we knew about each other. I knew about Pete Burns in Liverpool, Eric's Club. I knew about, you know, the bands that he was in. So there was kind of Pete Burns in Liverpool. There was Martin Degville in Birmingham, who went on to become Zig Zig Sputnik. And there was me, Marilyn, you know, and the kind of characters, Steve Strange in London. We all knew about each other. And in fact, one of the funniest memories I have in the 70s was I really wanted to go to Liverpool because I heard this club, Eric's, was like the place to be. And we were terrified to go because we were told if we went to Liverpool, we'd get beat up.
All right. Okay.
Because we're like, you know, we were like, you know, back in the 70s, like, the way you looked was, it was like, it was everything.
Right.
And if you went somewhere and you looked slightly similar to someone else, they would kind of punch you.
Right.
So, you know, so initially with Pete Burns, there was a lot of hostility, you know, and then eventually after a few years, you know, we sort of became friends and shook hands. But in, you know, in the 80s, we said a lot of bitchy things about each other. I used to call him Third Degree Burns. And then when I had my first flop single, when the Medal song didn't chart very highly, he said he was going to send me a reef. So, you know, it was kind of, there was a lot of bitchiness. It was really funny. But, you know, I loved him. I mean, he was an amazing character and, you know, always fascinating. You know, when he walked into a room or when he walked down the street, you couldn't avoid him.
Yeah. Right.
You know, what he turned himself into was quite outstanding and quite shocking as well, you know, quite shocking. But I think, you know, as a kind of fellow weirdo, you know, he's someone that I kind of had a lot of admiration for. You know, he lived his life very much in the spotlight. You know, he couldn't hide because of what he created. He was, you know, you couldn't walk down the, like, I can disappear. Yeah, I take off my hat, take off my makeup, put on a hoodie, some glasses, and people don't really notice me.
Okay.
But when, you know, when Pete Burns left the house, you know, he had to always be Pete Burns. Yeah.
What's next? I read that you might be working together on a new album.
We have some stuff that we've already recorded. And in fact, tonight we're going to do a handful of new songs.
Right.
But we are not completely satisfied with the album that we did 2 years ago. So there's a few songs that we're happy with, and then we want to do some new ones. We were writing last week. We wrote a new song last week that I really like. But I think, you know, when you write, if you're in the right place, you can come up with some really good work, you know. Having been on the road for 5 months, I think we're really in a pretty good place in terms of writing and recording. And we, you know, with the new songs, we can kind of tell what works with the audience, you know, which ones go down well, which ones maybe need a bit of work, you know. So it's interesting. We're going to do like, I think 3 new songs tonight.
Oh, right.
One of my favourite songs is a song called Different Man,
Right.
which is a song I wrote about Sly Stone.
Sly Stone?
Yeah.
From the yeah. Okay.
Yeah, Sly and the Family Stone. I read an interview with Sly Stone. I'm not sure how much I'm going to talk tonight because obviously there's the language barrier. Or do you think people will understand
Right.
me?
Yeah, I see.
Will they understand me? Because I tend to talk a lot on stage, and I don't know if it'll work here.
Well, I think depends on the audience, but
Yeah.
usually they understand it.
Because I normally tell the whole story about, you know, Sly Stone and Harry was living in his car.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, he was living in his car.
Yeah,
I think he's still living in his car.
Yeah, there was.
So the song is about that. You know, it's about addiction, I suppose. Yeah.
Thank you very much for
Thank
taking
you.
your time.